Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jodie. It's lovely to be part of this.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And I kind of feel like I have to sort of set the scene for where I left off with talking to you, in that I came to see you for osteopath treatment. A friend recommended, they said that you specialise in women's osteopathy and women's health. And I wanted to see you because I had really bad hip pain. And she also said you did sort of womb work around, women's energy. I thought that sounds really interesting. And I had all my neck stuff done, which was incredible. You completely fixed me in that sense. And then you said, okay, well, let's talk about the next session when we go into sort of holistic pelvic care. Or I think that was that the word you used?
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there going, there's lubrication on your desk. And you recommended a book called Wild Feminine, which I have here. I've got it. And I went home and I thought, let me look into this before I book in for a session. And it was all about vaginal massage. And I completely freaked out because I didn't know that was what it was all about, holistic pelvic care. I thought it was just work from the outside. And I just thought, what is going on? Was I just going to turn up and have a little bit of a, how do I put this nicely, like a vaginal massage, and without even realizing? And it just brought up so much sort of fear for me, and I didn't even know it existed. And I started thinking, is this what you sort of imagine as a happy ending massage? And now I thought, you know what, I just need to bring you in. You're looking at me like I'm mad. I need to bring you in because I need to talk to you about actually what this is all about and why you got into this. So can I please hand over to you to just tell me what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Where shall I start with it all? So how did I get into it? Maybe I'll start with that. No, I'm gonna get into that after. I think I need to give some background as to what holistic pelvic care is and what I do, because obviously if someone's coming for a session, you do not 100% someone is fully informed before doing anything. So I think we were just even discussing the possibility of doing it rather than actually anything else with you. So that's really, really important. 100% that someone is fully knowing.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to introduce you as the person that just randomly just sprung vaginal massage on people. But for me, it was just, I hadn't booked in for the session, and it was just, I hadn't yet understood what it was all about.
Yeah. So it is, I'm going to go into background now. So I'm an osteopath, and then I specialised in women's health osteopathy, 2-year diploma in that. And that was after having had 2 children myself, and, being exposed obviously to the world of pregnancy and birth and women's health and postpartum care. And for me, there's always been just a huge kind of gap between, I think, what women really deeply need on many levels and the type of care we're actually receiving. I can speak for this country anyway, and I think actually it's wider as well in other countries as well. So I started working, specialising in women's health and working with women with gynaecological dysfunction, with pregnancy, postpartum care, and the osteopathy is an amazing tool. And as part of osteopathy, we do, as a specialism, we do learn internal techniques. That's actually been part of osteopathy since the very beginning. Andrew Taylor Still, who created osteopathy, in the late 1800s, would do internal work. So that was part of osteopathy, which for many kind of practitioners that sort of died out. But the studies I do is sort of really holding that important historical piece of osteopathy present. So as osteopaths, we've got an amazing understanding of the connection of all the body, and internally there are so many connections to all other parts that it's a really important part to work on, in my experience, in order to help with women's health. So as I was already doing internal work as part of my osteopathy, and then I came across my teacher, Tammy Lynn Kent, who is the book you mentioned earlier. It's written Wild Feminine, and has created a method called holistic pelvic care. So she's a women's health physical therapist in America. And she, through all her experiences, developed this kind of holistic energetic work with the pelvic bowl. And when I came, I heard her in a podcast actually, and I just knew I had to study with her instantly. I knew. And she happened to be coming to London like 6 weeks after I'd heard her talk, so I booked in immediately for her course. I just made, I just made sure I was going to do it, cleared everything in order to do it, and it was amazing training. So that was nearly 3 years ago now, and so with Tammy's method, I actually integrate that with the osteopathy. There's an energetic component to it, which is really powerful. So I'll just maybe explain a little bit what a holistic pelvic care session involves.
Please
so this
do.
is what I would talk to someone before a session. So start the session just doing some grounding work and really making sure someone is very fully present, and really making sure that the body has given consent. So there'll always be a verbal consent before and written consent, but before we start, just really making sure that your body and your womb and your vagina are also consenting. Because as women, I think that consent is often slightly overlooked, like the body actually giving permission for things, whether it's medical or anything. And we're not taught to listen to our bodies at all. So we'd start off really listening in and getting consent from the body. And if that is a yes, then we start the session just by connecting with the perineal body and doing some grounding work there.
What's the perineal body?
So that is the area between the vagina and the anus.
Okay, so the actual physical part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I know some people speak about spiritual bodies or energetic bodies, so I just wanted to clear that.
No, the actual perineum. And then we'd start vaginally and just testing, first of all, if there's any tenderness or numbness around the vagina. And very often there will be spots that are slightly tender or slightly numb, and that's indicate there's an imbalance there. We'll then check the tone and strength in the vagina, comparing the front, back, left and right, and really checking that there is balance between there, because very commonly I find that one side is not activating as well as the other. So maybe one side is hypertonic, it's like extra contracted, and the other is like hypotonic, is weaker. So even just identifying an imbalance is really powerful, because most women don't know they've got an imbalance there. All we're told to do as women is squeeze and contract our pelvic floor. But the balancing element of it is really crucial. So then once that's like a map, we've got where's the tension, tenderness, numbness, weakness, or hypotonia. And then we'll start then with the balancing session. And Tammy teaches something called the Fleur Technique, which is basically a balancing technique. So we'd start with grounding, and then we connect with the left side of the body and the left ovary, and just energetically connecting there and listening to what's coming up. And it's really about, so as a practitioner, I'm just holding a space for the person I'm working with, and allowing them to experience what it is, whatever it is they're experiencing. Because often, well, mostly the women who come to me, and I think this is pretty universal. No, women have not connected with their bodies in this way before. Actually connecting with their bodies in a non-sexual, non-medical way. It's just like, oh, I'm just listening and being present to my body. And, you know, women who are 30, 40, 50, 60, for the first time in their lives, they're for the first time ever, they're listening to that part of their body.
Wow.
And it's really, really profound. So I'll just talk a bit more about the Fleur technique. So we connect with the left side, see what's present, and we're gently, as we're kind of connecting, I do some kind of energetic balancing around there. So I'm releasing, do some gentle myofascial release and it's an interactive kind of dialoguing process where whatever is coming up for you, and it might be that specific things we'll go through a very, very detailed history before we do this session. So there are be areas that we've already identified, but sometimes things might come up that you didn't know were in your consciousness, and if it's appropriate to work through that, then we can dialogue about that and gently release the tension or numbness around that. And then we'd move to the right side and do the same, and then we'd balance the left and the right, and we'd connect centrally with the womb energy and the vagina, and then we'd connect up the heart and the womb, and finish with a kind of bringing in the light and bringing a blessing and to that space. So it's a really, really beautiful practice. It's very, very holistic, and it's really, really, really powerful. I think largely because we as women have not been taught to connect with our bodies in that way.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking, like, why has this knowledge, I presume it was once there, but why has it gone? This is one of my biggest questions at the moment, is why have we become so disconnected? It's just bizarre. And what kind of things come up when you're going into the different size and different ovaries? What kind of things might come up?
Honestly, anything, because every story, everybody has their own history. And I will sort of guide, based on what I'm sensing, and there's, kind of general guidelines, like often the left side can often be about feminine issues, how receptive we are, how awake is our sensual nature, how we've identified as a woman in this world, and what that role is, what the role of being of the we talk about the kind of the feminine energy is pure kind of receptive energy, how my senses are receiving. And so we often kind of in this work associate that with the left side of our body mapping to the right side of our brain. And then the right side often to the kind of masculine expressive energy, so how the energy is being expressed into the world, and that might relate to, so where the feminine might relate to like mother line, that might relate to father line, or to our work or our projects in this world, or how kind of busy we are, and my balance between what I'm receiving and nurturing and what I'm giving out into the world. And a very, very common imbalance is that we're overworking, not focusing on our sensual nature, and just it's all about output, and we end up with an imbalance between the left and the right. One side that is working really hard, and one side which is maybe disconnected or overgiving, or Tammy talks about kind of there's different patterns where we're the way we hold our energy of we can be cut off from it, or we can be giving it all away, in both those areas.
And that can actually show up in sort of tension, tightness, or energetically in our womb space, in our ovaries.
Yeah.
And could that be maybe why people might have growths or cysts on certain sides? Is that to do with it?
Maybe, or maybe there's other things related, I mean, there will be more to it than that, but tension will affect blood flow, and you've got to look at someone's whole history, basically.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I believe it is part of it, the energetics that we hold there. And it's the more I do this work, the more I sort of see that we hold it's our root pattern there in our pelvic bowl, and that's a pattern that's often been established at a very, very young age, kind of pre-verbally, and it's like it's our pattern that we establish to like feel safe in the world, and maybe we've learnt it from our parents at a very young age. So often things are being held there that are maybe not even are things, it could be ancestral patterns as well. It's and things that have happened in our lives often imprint there as well. And so when you can be working there, and like images, memories will come up, or you'll see yourself at a particular age, and it's just like it's amazing when you connect that way, how these things just emerge in your consciousness, maybe something you haven't thought about for 20 years, and it's just like, oh, that's sitting there in the memory, in the tissue memory in my pelvic bowl. And when we bring it into consciousness, into awareness, then you get to work with that pattern and do the healing work with it. Whereas when it's sitting there unconsciously, then it's just our kind of part of the operating system that we don't even know is affecting our behaviours.
So it might be that someone comes to see you. Well, why would people come and see you in the first place? Just discomfort, or they're just curious?
A mixture. So I see a lot of women who have had babies and who are experiencing problems after delivery. So I see some sort of very complex cases, some just maybe not so complex, but they could be experiencing incontinence, urinary incontinence, fecal incontinence, vaginal prolapse, so often I'm seeing women who have kind of experienced trauma from birth. Sometimes I'll be working, someone might even come to me with their baby, and I'll hear the story about a very difficult birth, and I'll recommend that they come for the session, so they might hear about it that way, or they've already heard about this work and kind of come and look it out. So postpartum issues. I see quite a few women maybe who've had endometriosis, and they've been down a kind of long path, and they've discovered that this kind of work might be part of the story. So I've seen a few women with endometriosis, women with pelvic pain, women experiencing pain having sex, dyspareunia we call that. What other things? Some women are already just in that point in their life where they're ready to kind of explore that, and they're just being preventative, which is amazing.
So then they might come.
Most are coming because there's already a problem that they want to sort out. But
and so then let's say someone does come with hip pain or endometriosis, and then you explore the pelvic bowl and you feel tension, and then you also do the energetic work. What's the next process? If you feel like do you release the emotions during the session, or is it then that it alerts you to something that could be unconsciously there, and then they need to go and do their homework? Or what's the process of healing that?
We will often do a lot of release and energetic healing in the session itself. If that person is ready to, again, it's only what you're, when you're kind of doing trauma work, it's really, really important that you're only ever doing what the body can handle in that moment, and never, never, never overwhelming it.
You would know, you would feel that.
Yeah. definitely, like there's signs that the person is kind of checking out, and so the kind of communication is really, really important, and there's continued consent throughout the session. So so it might be, you know, you do a small amount for that person, and then that's enough for today, and then you'll leave it for a bit, and they maybe need to go and do some of their own work. In the meantime, you come back to it. Some people, it's a kind of the complete, you know, you do a complete kind of healing session, and, you know, an issue like a traumatic birth, you process that in the session, and you know, often there is, you know, a lot of emotional release if that person is ready for it, and you know, virtually always the person feels different and more connected with their energy afterwards. So yeah, mostly I would say 98% of the time you're doing you know, you're healing at an event or something that has gone on, and that is processed then by the body. You know, once you've done that work, you generally don't need to go back and do that work. There's always other layers, but that thing is processed, and it doesn't have that same kind of energy around it like it did, if that makes any sense.
That's so fascinating, and this is the whole reason why I wanted to ask you about this, because I had such this strange preconceived idea of what vaginal massage was, and actually it's completely different, and sounds like it's something that almost every single woman should do.
Yeah, and you asked about what women should do for themselves afterwards. So there is then lots of other things you can then do. I think once you've kind of gained this connection with this part of your body, then kind of maintaining that is important. So there's practices of, you can do your own kind of self massage, your own kind of connecting in, doing kind of meditations. I've just started sort of leading some group meditations on sort of connecting with this area of your body, and yeah, doing things that are practices that are going to help you stay connected with your kind of feminine nature, with your womb nature, with your womb energy, your ovarian energy is important. So I will kind of recommend practices for women to kind of check in. So usually I do a minimum of 2 sessions with someone. Some women I am working for longer. But it could be someone's coming for those 2 sessions, we've worked through some issues, and then they're I give them homework to go and continue their practice. There's sort of different patterns, but
and self-massage, because I know Tammy Lynn Kent speaks about this in her book, and she talks about vaginal massage, and where do the lines draw, or is there a line drawn between sort of the massage for physical tension and actually the idea of pleasure? Are they connected? How do they connect? Can you speak on that?
It's interesting. So I've really been on this journey this year of looking at all this. So it's like I studied with Tammy, and now I'm studying with a wonderful lady called Sheila Kumara Hay, who's in America, and I'm doing a training called, I'm halfway through at the moment, called Ecstatic Birth. And it is all about bringing pleasure into your birth experience. And I've come across loads of different interesting teachers on this, and really there isn't a divide between what is pleasure and what brings, being sensual as a woman, and allowing ourselves to feel pleasure in our body, and it not to feel. So there's a lot of work around shame in what I do, because we hold so much shame around connecting with ourselves, around pleasure in the body, and this is historical, and we have, thousands of years of history of this to work through. So there isn't a line, but it's like, to start with, a lot of women are disconnected, and numb, basically. Like, so almost like the starting point is just connecting and starting to feel and awaken things again. So the more we are just touching certain areas of the body, we're increasing the part of the brain that reads that part of the body. We're increasing the nerve endings. So the more we touch a certain area of our body, the more receptive it will become, and the more we'll feel, and then the more pleasure we can receive. So we can really open up our potential for pleasure through this work, and open up our potential for experiencing different types of orgasm, and just feeling more pleasure in more ways, basically.
Do you think women should be having more pleasure and more orgasms generally?
Well, I don't know generally how much pleasure women are receiving. I think it's a really, really good antidote to stress. So, we're living in a very, very stressed out world. And oxytocin, the pleasure hormone, is definitely an antidote to cortisol, the stress hormone. So yes, the more oxytocin we can release, which we release through orgasm and pleasure, and it's not just about sexual pleasure. It can be pleasure through awakening your senses in any way. It's like, there's an amazing teacher called Jade Egg Is, who I've been doing some work with this year, who's does a Jade Egg practice, and she's incredible. And she really talks about kind of almost like each cell in our body can be having an orgasm. It's like that. It's not all about there. Actually, we can learn to move the energy through our bodies and to experience pleasure from all our senses. So it could be that the feel of something, or it could be the smell of something, the taste, sitting and looking at a beautiful view, holding a lovely cup of hot tea could awaken your pleasure and make you feel good. So it's
like pleasure on so many levels.
Pleasure on so many levels, and I think the more we can tune into that, I think the more our feminine can awaken. And I've really been working on that myself this year. It's like, I'd say my kind of root pattern as a woman has been to be a really hard worker and kind of overdo things and take on board people's stress. And I've been doing a lot of work to reverse those patterns, so that I really do put myself first, like that whole idea of looking after yourself so that you can look after others. Whereas, most women feel guilty about looking after themselves and put everyone else first, but actually really awakening the pleasure in our body and realizing that it's really good for our health, it's really good for our well-being, and it's really good for everyone around us. The more we become more centered, the more we're awakening to pleasure and looking after ourselves.
And can I ask, what have you been doing on your journey? What have you discovered? You don't have to share everything, but just what's been the most profound thing that has started awakening this feminine energy for you?
Well, I think the Jade Egg practice is really amazing. That's something I've been working on the last few months with using kind of Jade Egg Is method, which is really amazing. And she's kind of Taoist background, and so it's very much about kind of energy and moving energy through the body, and just awakening our sensuality through Jade Egg practice. So not thinking about it as just strengthening and holding, but actually kind of getting dexterity with the egg, and you can really end up, the lubrication of your vagina can completely change. So if there's slight dryness through actually through the holistic pelvic care, through kind of vagina massage, Jade Egg practice, you can totally change that. So you don't, and you could change, you're changing the hormone balance and the way the cells are reacting. So yeah,
through the holistic care or through the Jade Egg practice, or
both. Yeah.
And could you just talk a little bit for people that don't know what a Jade Egg is and what you do with it?
It is a like an egg-shaped piece of stone made of jade. Nephrite, pure nephrite jade is good, and the jade itself is meant to have certain qualities, like grounding qualities. And you thread it's good if you get ones with a little hole in where you can thread something through it, so that you've got something to kind of pull it in and out. And so Saida has a whole method where she talks about learning to kind of sit the egg in. So you're learning to use the outer vaginal muscles to kind of draw in, basically. And they're often muscles which have not been used much and are slightly wasted, basically. So learning to kind of sit the egg in helps to kind of really switch on those muscles. She also, in the practice, really talks about just awakening the opening of your vagina through touch, and by doing that you're really, as I said, increasing the kind of brain receptivity. And then she has sort of practices where you can learn to move the egg in different ways, and using your breath in certain ways. And yeah, I'm finding her teaching is really amazing.
Oh, it's really interesting. I'm gonna have to look her up.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, since seeing you've opened the doors for a lot of vaginal womb work. I don't know what you did, but reading this book, then someone recommended the book from, is it Mama Gina? About pussy.
Yeah.
And then something flashed across my screen from Kim Anami, who does vaginal kung fu. And I actually have just ordered one of her jade eggs, so that's coming. And it's just like this whole area of my life that I didn't want to talk about has just started. The universe is like, Jodie, got to pay attention. Well, so it's a whole new area for me.
Yeah, well, I read that book this year as well, Mama Gina's book, Pussy, and it is an amazing book. And actually, Sheila, who I'm studying with this year, studied with Mama Gina. So,
oh wow,
so I've kind of been exposed to a lot of those teachings. And actually, on Monday, she's starting a morning pleasure practice for 5 days. It's a free practice going on for 5 days that you can sign up to. So I'm doing that next week. So I'm always kind of like checking it out, these other, all these things. And I kind of weaving all these things together in my practice, basically.
It's so nice to pull different bits and create your own healing modality.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how you make change. I'm often saying to my clients that yes, we'll work on the nutrition, but we have to look at the body as a whole. We have to address the energetic, emotional side of things as well. And women with fertility issues or endometriosis or really deep-rooted pelvic problems or hormone imbalances, I just feel like nutrition is absolutely fantastic and it's an absolutely amazing base work, but we have to address all the different areas around that as well.
I agree. I think the two go together really well. Like the women who I see for fertility issues and for endometriosis, the nutrition is always a really key element. But it, like you say, that there's other things they also need to sort of connect. I mean, I really think every woman needs to learn if we all learn to connect in this way with our wombs, I think the world could end up being quite a different place. But for anything, every child born is born from our wombs. So if we could do this work, pre-conception, that would be amazing. I sadly didn't discover this work pre-conception, but
was it that sort of almost led you on this journey?
Yeah, a whole all sorts of things led me on this journey. You know, some of it has definitely been about being, you know, being a mother, you know, relationship.
Yeah, they'll challenge you, those two things, won't they?
Yeah.
I often thought before I had a baby that a baby would be my happy ending and that was it, life would be magical. And then it sort of almost brings up some of your deepest, darkest demons.
I've always said it's like having a mirror put in front of you, having a child. It's just like they will reflect back to you everything, and at different ages they're reflecting different parts of you back to them. So I've got teenagers being reflected back to me now.
Oh God, I'm not looking forward to that stage.
But yeah, you know what, it's a real gift if you're willing to go in and do that work. It's but yeah, like you said, it's not going to solve all life's problems. But it will reveal much to you.
Totally. I think even the same for relationships. You almost get into a partnership and again, it reveals things about you that you didn't even know or weren't willing to look at, and then it just slaps bang in front of your face.
Yeah.
I just dream of a world, though, going back to this idea of women connecting, of just healthcare taking account of all of these practices. I'd love to create some space where we have practices and people helping to educate us on how to take care of our own bodies. And I've spoken about this a lot before, in that the current medical model is very much like, you've got a problem, they'll fix it, and we give our responsibility to other people. But this is, and the work that you do is very much about taking back that responsibility and that care and understanding your body and trusting that if you do the work, it will heal itself.
Yeah, so you just said that so beautifully there. Yeah, totally. You know, it's a patriarchal model of health we have at the moment. And yeah, we've been living with this patriarchal model for a long time. And I'm always doing all sorts of training. I'm doing something at the moment called Female Alchemy, and we're really sort of diving deep into the feminine and the history of the feminine. And God has been a kind of a masculine, deity for so long, and it's just like we were discussing at the weekend on this training. You know, what if and we've been studying the myths of Inanna, the sort of female goddess from Sumerian times, like 2000 BC, and where actually the story is about the story we were studying was like Inanna going down into the underworld for 3 days, and she comes back from the underworld, and she dies there and is saved, and there's lots of analogies there to the the Christ story, and but that was predated it by some 2,000 years. But like goddess, the idea of the feminine and divine feminine and goddesses is, yeah. Where do we start with all that? It's
a whole other podcast of the goddesses.
Yeah, what, we've been living in this patriarchal world for so long that it's when you're so deep in it, it's hard to see it, and it's just like it takes these reflections to start seeing the world in a different way, and to recognize the validity of exactly our own experiences and trusting the incredible wisdom of our bodies. I mean, that's something I think I learned as an osteopath, that the complexity of the body is beyond anything science can get a grip of. There's trillions of chemical reactions happening every second in our body, and we are, and the fact that we're sat here talking and that we live our lives, that we're here on this earth, I think is deeply profound. Life is profound, and yeah, to bring back that kind of wonder and trust, as you say, that of the wisdom of the body, that we can really listen to it and listen to what it's telling us, and that there is that the answers aren't outside of us but inside of us, like using people around us to support us, but actually ultimately bringing this back. And I think we need to start with our education system. I don't know where we start with it, but
I know I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders sometimes, with just the sheer vastness of where do we begin. And I'm just thinking, okay, you know what, I'll just take one step at a time. I'll do my bit by bit.
And we're not here to save the world, but it's like the more conversations like this that are had, the more the more we're living this way ourselves, then we're examples to others, and we spread that through our beingness rather than trying to fix everyone.
Oh, do you know what, I need to remember that, because sometimes I do feel like I am here to save the world and I need to get on with it.
And I think that's a pattern I recognize as well, and I think that's a kind of common pattern for people who go into kind of healing type work, that it's again just seeing that for what it is, and that it's the bit that nurturing that part, it's
that part needs to calm down a bit.
And just proceed.
And what if I sort of had to ask you, what is the one thing that you think as women we can do for our well-being and to connect with our feminine and our womb space?
It's one thing, but
you can give me a couple if you want. I'll be generous.
Well, it's taking time to connect with ourselves and letting go of any like judgments, and letting go of feelings of guilt, judgments that what we're doing is somehow not okay or not allowed. So there's a little process I take women through of this kind of identifying, what are your beliefs that prevent you from doing that, and doing it a self-forgiveness. I forgive myself for judging myself, or that's, or looking at yourself as a friend. What's the judgment I'm making on myself that, well, if I took that time to really nurture myself, I'd feel really guilty about that. It's just like, well, would you look at your friend and tell her she shouldn't be doing that? So you'd probably say, really pleased you're looking after yourself. So it's like, maybe the advice is treat yourself as you would your friend. Be your own friend.
Be your own friend. I love that.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation. I am so pleased you agreed to talk to me, and I'm really excited about this idea of holistic pelvic care and everything that you do. It's brilliant, and I'm so pleased that we've had this conversation to shed light on this whole topic and why it's so important for us.
Yeah.
And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
My website is probably the best place to find me. Rebecca Davies ost.com. And you can find kind of different links to I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. I think you can find all the links on my website.
Amazing. I'll pop them in the notes as well so people can get access to you. Thank you so much.
Lovely to talk to you, Jodie.
So lovely to speak to you. Bye.